Hey, good afternoon, folks. It's Mike and Miles from the Riff Circle, and we're here today doing a top five albums tied in with nostalgia. So we had a little bit of confusion in doing this one. My five picks are picks where I listened to this album more than the band's best album, what I would consider their best, because the nostalgia factor raises it up a notch and it makes me want to listen to it more than if I were to pull from this catalog and say I want the best. And then
Yeah.
Mike, you picked your top five just nostalgic albums,
I picked top five nostalgic albums. Arguably, many of these may be what most people consider
and
the
that's
best
fine.
album. Not
Yeah,
all of them. For
sure,
I'll put it
sure.
on the record, not all of them are like one is definitely a hot take and will not be one people consider
Oh, I
as a
love that.
best album for sure. But a few of them definitely are what people would consider the best one. So
Yeah, no,
you know we'll
that's
we'll roll
fine.
with it here.
Yeah, we're gonna roll with that because it's all on the same thing. Nostalgia is the theme. Millennials, we are millennials, and we know that we're paying a big price for nostalgia these days. The Magic and Pokemon trading cards, old video game systems, things like that are
Hmm.
skyrocketing in price because our generation loves nostalgia, and these albums are going to reflect that. For reference, we were both born in 1988, so you're going to see some 90s stuff, maybe some early 2000s stuff, kind of
Yeah.
in those formidable teenage years, early teens type of thing, maybe in preteen, like right before just getting into music. So, and
Yep.
I got a couple picks in here that are not that. And then we're going to do another episode of this because we each had 10 videos, and I got a lot more stuff, but this is more there's a little bit of a theme here. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
kick us off, Mike, with this here. I'm going to kick us off. Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction. Okay.
Amazing.
I don't think this is Bad Religion's best album. I think Process of Belief is, but
Process of belief. Yeah.
I listened to this one more, and it was a toss up. It was between this one and Recipe for Hate.
I would say Recipe for
I
Hate.
could have gone with either one, but I realize it's either one. Either one would have been fine. And quite frankly, I just chose this one because I was feeling it today. We could do this episode again, and be forced to go with the same bands, and I could choose Recipe for Hate in a different time. But Stranger Than Fiction, it just does it for me. The track list is my favorite Bad Religion sound, and it just came out at a time. I mean, this was before. I think this was '94, so it would have been a little bit before. But when you and I were searching that punk scene, this was
Hmm.
a good record of theirs, and is one that you and I think just found in those Walmart scans. And I
Yep.
was like, this is phenomenal. So this is one of my this and Recipe for Hate were some introduction to Bad Religion for me, and I love this album. I love the tracks. I love the pacing. It's fast. It's raw. It's just that just stripped down Bad Religion that I love, and it's just got some just absolute heat on it. The opening track, strange, the title track is just phenomenal. So pick number one for me, Stranger Than Fiction.
Love it. Love it. Solid pick. Definitely a childhood pick there. My first one, I kind of put these in nostalgia order, I think.
Okay.
So first one, definitely some might consider the best album from this band. So Led Zeppelin 4. It is very important to me because I can attribute that to the album that got me into music just in general. I just really didn't experience music until I heard Black Dog off that album, and I'll never forget being in the car, getting picked up by my parents, and my dad cranking the album there, and my mom telling him to turn it down, and him saying, "No, you don't turn down Led Zeppelin." And
Literally
like that
never.
moment,
Literally
that
never.
that moment there just completely changed
Yeah.
the
And
entire outlook on music for me.
this is to piggyback off that. I know a lot of people really like physical graffiti. That's been a kind of a roaring thing. I completely agree with you. I think four is their best album, and that's for a different episode on a different date. But four to me is just heat, the variation. It This is everything that Led Zeppelin does best. That's a phenomenal pick. And I'll never forget that's probably going to be one that goes on in the next episode. I didn't pick that one, but the first time
Can
hearing
hey,
Stairway to Heaven ever at like a eighth
yeah.
grade dance or something like that, and I was just like, this song is pure fire. What is this? And and you find out it's the greatest band of all time. All right, folks. Sorry for the jump there. Mike had someone at his door here, but we're gonna go on to my next pick. We have Rush, Snakes and Arrows. Okay, so this is definitely very far from Rush's best album. Okay, this is not Moving Pictures. It's not Hemispheres. But I love this one. So the nostalgia factor for me is this got me back into Rush. I hadn't heard them in a long time. I had heard some of their big hits, Limelight and Tom Sawyer, of course, and it never really went into their catalog. And I was down in Virginia training for my first real job in 2010, and I was renting a Ford Focus. And I said, you know what? I haven't heard Rush in a long time, and it was recommended to me on my music stream or something like that at the time, which was new then. And I was like, Snakes and Arrows. I don't know that album from them. I'm going to try it out. At the time, it was 3 years old because this came out in 2007. I have fond memories of lunchtime at these training sessions. I would just bomb around these Virginia back roads in the Ford Focus with this just blaring. And everyone knows how you treat a rental car. I just abused it and just flew through Virginia just with this thing rocking. And I think it's an underappreciated album from them. It's just pure rock. It's got some excellent tracks. Far Cry, Working Them Angels, The Main Monkey Business. Some of them they incorporate. I know the Snakes and Arrow live album is amazing. So Snakes and Arrows for me, it's just nostalgia for that Tom Petty free fall and just like doing your thing alone and just in a new setting. It's just, I'll never forget that. Just a cool album.
So sometimes it's scary how closely our things align, because it's like when I look at Snakes and Arrows, it's like I would also say that time period is what got me back into Rush as well, as I was not super into them. I knew of them at the hits, and then I was given tickets to go to the Snakes and Arrows tour, and I saw them live, and that was kind of the resurgence of like, wow, I need to listen to some deep cuts from this band.
I remember you were at that tour, which is crazy.
So it wasn't necessarily that album specifically, but the tour that went along with it, and and it's funny. The timing, so
perfect,
interesting one. Next one here would probably be a second play into childhood nostalgia, and that's Alanis Morissette's "Jagged Little Pill."
What a gem!
There's honestly not a bad song on this entire album.
No.
There's a reason it's such a massive hit. Again, people would consider this, I would say, best album from her. But it really comes down to, that's my sister's influence. There's actually 2 albums on here. The next one will be sister's influence as well. My sister's definitely, they had that cassette and it got played endlessly.
Well, and I think a lot of these albums for us are going to be, because back then people need to remember, we were still listening to radio in the car. That was a big thing. And you couldn't go 2 seconds without hearing Alanis Morissette on the radio when we were kids riding around on those Saturday mornings and afternoons with our parents. And it's like that freedom and that you just don't have responsibilities back then, and it just takes you back. That Alanis Morissette 100% for that. And like you said, siblings too. Yeah, I mean,
I would say that's the big one is, and a couple of these, come from my older sister, and it's like we were the younger ones, so we didn't have control over the radio. They did. Exactly. So a lot of it was built from the stuff they were putting on that they liked that we then heard. And it's like Alanis Morissette was definitely, there was no escaping it. It was played. I could hear it through the bedroom walls. I could hear it in the car. It was like, it was everywhere. And so it's like now it immediately, when it comes on, just takes me back to a different time.
And I have a very similar one that I'm going to do for the next episode we do of this. And a spoiler mine is the Perfect Circle debut. But that's more on that next episode. So next up for me, so the next 3 albums for me, 1999, 1999, and late 1998. And that was not done on purpose. I just realized when I was putting my notes together for this episode, I'm like, okay, there's a theme here. And it's funny. You texted me the other day. You were like, 1999 might have been the best year. And I was like, well, I like 97, 98. And I look back, I'm like, no, it actually was 1999. That was spot on. Spot on. Here's a gem from 1999.
Just so good.
Now, I don't think this is their best album. I think Self-Titled is.
I would agree with that.
And I'm not even sure I'd put this as their second best album. I think you could make a case for Take Off Your Pants and Jacket and Dude Ranch could fight for that position. But this is the one I listen to the most.
Yeah.
I even though I've gotten sick of Adam's song and all the small things, I could skip those every time. This still has some tracks on it. What's My Age Again never gets old for me. Aliens Exist. Those tracks
Classics.
are all, they'll never get old. Some of the deeper cuts on this album are phenomenal. Wendy Clear, Anthem, Party Song.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time trying to hear what he whispers at the beginning.
Yeah.
One of the first times I really put on headphones
Yeah.
to listen to an album. Like, what is he whispering there? And then you realize it's just profanity, and it just makes it even funnier. So, Don't Leave Me, Dump We. I mean, literally every track on this is just amazing, except for some of the hits I've heard too many times. But yeah, I'll always listen to this one first. Just 1999, that time period, coming of age. You see the music videos; they're just being what we wanted to be, just ridiculous and just, potty humor to the nth degree.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had to save myself and everybody watching from picking a Blink-182 album because we all know I could talk about that first. So I did not put them in, but I could absolutely agree with you on that one. My next pick is another definitely album that I heard from my sister, and it would be no doubt
what a win
Tragic
that
Kingdom.
album is. What a win.
It's definitely an album here that just again same thing as Alanis, so same kind of same thing, but the difference with this is this got me into a genre.
Oh yeah.
This was like my
ska
first
punk.
time first time I ever heard ska,
And
first
female
time
vocalist.
yeah, female vocals. First time I heard ska. First time I kind of had that punk feel.
Yep.
I think like the first like really like introduction into it, which then was just a whole new like wow, I like that sound.
Yeah.
And
Funnily enough, coming off the heels of my last pick, that was the first concert I had ever gone to, was with you, No Doubt,
That's
open
right.
for Blink-182. That was the first concert experience I ever had, and I thought it was the coolest thing that we just saw them in person. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Because I was a big No Doubt fan, huge No Doubt fan. Just they have their earlier stuff is so strong, and yeah, Tragic Kingdom, No Doubt, is just an absolute classic.
Yeah, monster album, and it's I honestly prefer everything of theirs up until Tragic Kingdom. I think they kind of change. I mean, nothing bad about anything past that.
Yeah.
I just think the sound becomes more poppy. I like
Yeah.
the much more speed and ska feel to the earlier stuff, but and probably a lot of people agree with me on that. That's not really necessarily an original feeling on that, but definitely an album that made my childhood from that aspect and what my genre tastes were to come from there.
Oh, for sure. All right, my next album. I'm going to dip into metal here. Okay, and a lot of people aren't going to know this band, but I certainly know them, and you know them because I talk about them.
I know them through you.
Yes, and now let me tell you, Chinese pressing. This is very hard to find. I got to shout out to the variant here for a second. Chinese pressing of this, and it's very cool. This album here, so Amorphous, Finnish prog metal band, the album Tuonela. This album here is ranked very low on most lists, and I get it. So Amorphous has eras, as a lot of bands have different eras. They had the doom stoner metal, then they go into this era. This was like a bridge where they have a little bit more clean vocals and are trying to do more rock. Again, this is released in 1999, so you have some of that stuff dying out and some of the rock stuff coming back a little bit. And this was this album, I stumbled upon this album because, like most of the other albums, I was looking for a different album. And what's funny about it, so with Bad Religion, if you're looking for one album and you find a different one by mistake, they're very similar albums.
Yeah.
There's not.
Yeah.
The album I was looking for, which was the one that comes before this, Elegy, completely different album, completely different. And so I got this album, and I was like, well, I don't even know if this is the same band as what I heard on the radio. I'm not even sure. I thought it was. And I put it away for a while, and I didn't love it. And lately, in the past five years, I reached for this one because it has the nostalgia factor of the time period 1999 when I was listening to it because I had the CD and I was like, well, I bought it, I'm going to listen to it.
Right. That's
And
all you
it's
have.
not that I disliked it, and I don't even have any specific memories tied to it. It's just that time period, and I think this album has aged extremely well.
Hmm.
And I think you could, in another 10 to 20 years, people are going to put this one higher on their list. It's just a phenomenal album. So Amorphous for me, again, that 1999 strikes a chord, that time period, but I just love that album, and you're not going to find it high up on most lists.
And what a thing to think about, just going back to that time period where it's like, and people don't realize this today, younger people. When we went and bought a CD or tape, if you bought the wrong one, or maybe one you weren't a fan of, it might be a month, 2 months before you're able to listen to something different again. Like
Yes,
you are stuck with that album, and
you
that's where
have
I
it.
think a lot of this attachment comes from. Like
Yeah.
that's
And
all you have is that. So then you start wearing out the popular tracks and you start going into the deep ones because that's all it is. It's
yeah.
not, oh, I like this band, so I'm going to choose to listen to this when I have all, millions of other options. It's
Yep.
great that I can go on an app now and I can listen to anything, but in that time period it was like that you didn't have that option. You
Yeah.
you spent the money, and what you had was what you spent money on, and that was
Exactly.
it.
And you got to remember 1999 we were 13. So we did that, this was pre-driving. We had to go
Yeah.
with our parents when they needed something at Walmart. You and I would go with them and we'd go and sit in the music section, and you would scan the barcode and they would have preloaded tracks that you could listen to with a pair of
Like
headphones that
15
everyone
seconds of each
shared.
one, or 20
Yeah,
seconds of each one, or
15
whatever.
to 30 seconds on each track. And if you were looking for a certain song, you could scan through some of them. They didn't have every song, and you just tried to find it and hope that was it. And again, at 13, you have no income, you have no vehicle, so you get the album home. You're like, okay, this wasn't the one I thought. I guess I'll try again with my parents in like 2 weeks, or in a month,
Yep.
and that's what it was. So yeah,
Yep.
that's a perfect example of this one, and same with the Bad Religions. Very very similar things where I'm looking for one thing, got something else, and then having lived with that album, I just go through it. I'm like, all right, this is one of my favorites. It reminds me of that time period.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that same time period, although most of these are from that time period, but Rob Zombie,
What a
Hillbilly
gem!
Deluxe.
What a
Um,
gem!
just talk about an album that we listened to so much through the video games that we played. And it just there was no escaping this one. If you grew up in this time period, when this came out, this has got to be on so many people's
It
lists
has to
for
be.
that. It
If you had a
just
PlayStation and you played Twisted Metal,
Yep.
this was the soundtrack to your video game playing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
and
funny.
just a good album in general. Like there's
It
just
is.
banger after banger on that thing.
It really is, and it's funny thinking about that, where so much of the music I listen to is from the video games that I played, because in that time frame in the 90s, video games had actual soundtracks.
Yep.
Like, and now it's cool that video games are more cinematic and have these symphony scores and things
Yeah,
like that. But we become attached to the tracks that we heard, and you'd play a level over and over and over again, and you hear the same song over and over and over
absolutely.
again with that. So it just becomes like ingrained in your system. But yeah, Rob Zombie, that made me a lifetime fan of
Oh
his.
yeah.
I think I probably have almost every album of his and White Zombie there. So it's like they just become uh, parts of what we are. And Phenomenal Live, still to this
Yep.
day, Phenomenal Live. Recommend that show to anybody.
Oh yeah. No, it's a great album. Great pick. I'm gonna piggyback off that with my last pick here, number five. The
Mhm.
king of nostalgia for I know you
There it
and
is.
me
Yeah.
is Americana. Not even close to. Well, it's not that it's not close to being their best, but it's not their best. You could put Ixnay above this. You could put Ignition above it. You could put Smash above it. You can make a case for any of those three, and I would accept those going above this. But again, it comes out late 1998, and the music video scene was on there, and this album, the album art too, was also
I was gonna
very
say the art.
intriguing. I don't know, it's that cartoon style. I don't know who the artist is. I should know, but I've always loved the art style in this one. The CD booklet too. Each song had its own picture to it, and I love that.
Yep.
And this piggybacks off of the kind of the video game thing too, where I had Bad Religion and Offspring. That was Crazy Taxi,
Yeah.
just a classic arcade game that we all played. You had Rob Zombie, which was in Twisted Metal, and these some of these bands that had these video game appearances really stuck. And it showcased some of like the more energetic, the more like awesome, and you're just tying
Yeah.
into those memories. So Offspring, Americana. I think it's. So let me say one quick thing about the album is I cannot stand Pretty Fly for a White Guy, and I cannot stand Why Don't You Get a Job. Okay, the two smash hits off this. Then you have The Kids Aren't All Right, but I like that song. You have two
Yeah.
smash hits off this that I don't ever want to listen to again. It's not because I wore them out. I genuinely don't like the songs. That said, you have You Ever, going into Staring at the Sun. Then you have Walla Walla, End of the Line, No Breaks.
And the line,
And
no
then
breaks. Ugh.
Americana, which I think is the Offspring's greatest song by a mile. And then Pay the Man, their most
Pay the man.
underrated song by a mile. This is the cuts in this make it. It's just a phenomenal album. I reach for it more than any of the other albums, and it's not their best, but it's got the nostalgia factor. Again, you and me riding around in the back seat playing this one of the car in the boombox. It just does. It doesn't get better
Yep.
than that.
Yep. Yep.
And I also, one last note, I used to listen to this album a lot when I was playing Zelda. When I was playing Ocarina of Time, I used to put this one on, which is the only reason I even heard Pay the Man, was because I would lose track of time and all of a sudden the song would come on. And it has a long intro, but when you get through the intro to it, you're like, whoa, this song's actually really good.
Fully agree with that.
That's my last pick.
Um, my last pick would not be an album that many people would consider as the best from this band. Very well known band. There are people would probably put this way down on the list as one of their worst albums. But for me, it's important. So Pearl Jam Backspacer. This album is
Interesting pick.
a very strong album for me. It's probably the one that I put on the most from Pearl Jam. A very unique album, much shorter format songs throughout it, so it kind of plays into some of the punk roots from them. Came out in 2008, 2009, a time frame where I was kind of rediscovering music from a different standpoint. I was kind of more like pop stuff was really what was happening, and there were
Yeah.
a few bands that I kind of re got into. In this time period, Pearl Jam, Dave Matthews Band, two bands that I kind of like wanted to get back into hearing music and not the over compressed
Yeah.
pop music of the time. Not that these aren't pop music to some extent as well, but just some of my favorite songs from them. Just Breathe, Amongst the Waves, uh, Unthought Known. It just so many great songs in this album, and I think it gets very overlooked because they just have some of the biggest albums of all time, not just the
They
biggest
do.
albums of the 90s. They have some of the
Yes.
biggest albums of all time
Yep.
with like their first three albums. So it's rare for I think someone to even mention this album.
Yeah.
But for me, it just came out at a time that just really just inspired me back into music and kind of pulled me back into rock music and bands that were just doing different stuff. As that I bring up them and Dave Matthews Band specifically because it really ignited my excitement for live shows again too.
Yeah.
To go and see a band that played different songs every single night and different versions of songs that
Oh
you've
yeah.
heard a million times. And it kind of was like, well, this is a whole nother world that I hadn't been into, which then opened the door, Pearl Jam to Dave Matthews Band to Grateful Dead and just kind of those, some of the jam bands and things like
It
that
starts to
that I got
snowball.
into. So,
Yeah, for sure.
but I attribute it to that album, and just to me, an amazing album that I wish more people talked about.
No, I actually am not familiar with that album, so I need to visit that one. And to go off of what you said, punk roots. Okay, for those of you who don't think that Pearl Jam has punk roots, I'm going to remind you that Eddie Vedder is a guest vocalist on The Recipe for Hate by Bad Religion.
Hmm.
He's a guest vocalist on 2 tracks on that album. So
Yep.
he's guest vocalist American Jesus, and he's also on Watch It Die on that album. And the
Okay.
story for that's kind of interesting. He was a fan of Bad Religion because remember, Bad Religion, they put out their first album in '82, folks. Okay, so they've been around by this point in time, by '93, '92 when they recorded this. And Eddie Vedder, you know, said he was a fan and didn't know if they wanted him on a couple tracks just for fun, and they said yeah, sure. And so he makes two appearances on the Recipe for Hate album, which is just straight punk rock. So he
Yeah.
does have that in him.
Oh
Great
yeah.
picks, excellent picks. We're gonna
Yeah.
do another episode of this because we have more, but
Absolutely.
we want to fit it within a certain timeline and kind of spread out some of these stuff instead of having 2 hour videos. Keep it shorter. But we want to know your
Yeah.
picks. What are your nostalgic picks?
Sure.
Next time, we're going to get into more personal stuff, the later half of lives. People have picks based off of relationships,
Mm.
family members.
Things get deep.
Things get, yeah, the nostalgia picks. This was a fun one for us because this is when we were kids. This is
Yep.
this is the stuff we like. Me starting my new job and a lot of the 90s stuff when we were 12, 13.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff where people latch onto when they experience big life moments, whether they're good or bad. I'm going to save some of those picks for mine later on the next episode, but we want to hear yours. Put them in the comments. Let us know what nostalgic albums do you reach for, maybe more than their best album, or
Yeah.
maybe because it reminds you of a certain time period of your life and that elevates the album for you. So let
Yeah.
us know. We appreciate you sticking around with us, and take care. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.